Hello and welcome back. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. The Kremlin says President Vladimir Putin's foreign policy aide has spoken with members of the US administration after Moscow received American proposals on a possible Ukraine peace deal. Israeli emergency services say a Palestinian assailant killed 2 people in a multi-phase attack involving a vehicle and a stabbing in northern Israel. Police say the suspect was shot by a civilian and taken to hospital as Israel ordered a forceful military response in the West Bank. Sudan's RSF says the army struck a fuel market in Nyala during intensified air attacks, triggering massive fires and casualties. The military has not commented as fighting continues across Darfur. At least 15 people were injured in a stabbing at a factory in Mishima, central Japan. Police arrested a 38-year-old man for attempted murder after multiple victims were stabbed and others sprayed with bleach. Myanmar's military plans phased elections in December and January, covering limited townships amid civil war. The junta admits voting won't be nationwide and results timing remain unclear. India has raised alarm over rising attacks on minorities in Bangladesh, citing nearly 2,900 incidents against Hindus and others. Concerns grew after a Hindu man was killed by a mob. Bangladesh has condemned the act and made arrests. The United States says it carried out a strike against Islamic State militants in northwest Nigeria at the request of the Nigerian government. President Donald Trump and the US military say the group is accused of targeting Christians in the region. Japan's government approves a record $785 billion budget as Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi seeks to balance active spending with debt concerns. The administration says it aims to reassure investors amid rising bond yields and a weak yen by limiting new borrowing. Viewers, let's start with the top story. Now, the Kremlin says that contacts have taken place with the US after Moscow received American proposals on a possible peace deal for Ukraine. President Vladimir Putin's foreign policy aide, Yuri Ushakov, held phone talks with several members of President Donald Trump's administration. The Kremlin says the proposals were delivered to Moscow by Putin's envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, after meetings in Miami and are now being analyzed. Both sides agreed to continue dialogue, but Moscow says public comment could harm negotiations. Local media reports suggest Putin may consider limited territorial swaps while seeking full control of the Donbass. The Kremlin declined to discuss details. All right, viewers, fresh developments now coming in with Putin sending a signal to Trump on the Ukraine proposals. And Kyiv residents, however, doubt Zelensky-Trim talks will bring any good change. I now request Mr. Keith Walsh to join us in the discussion here. Thank you very much, Mr. Walsh, for joining us here at NewsX World once again. What's your view of the latest statements from the Kremlin?
Well, what is interesting, first of all, can I say a very happy Christmas to the team.
Merry Christmas to you as well.
Delhi.
Yeah.
Look, the Kremlin will keep making these statements.
Yeah.
They will keep coming to conclusions based on what is in the public domain. They are part of a quite separate process of negotiation that is occurring between themselves and the Americans. There is no direct link between the Kremlin and their discussions and what's happening in terms of Ukraine. It's quite a separate thing that's going on here. So what we need to discuss is how do we get everyone around the table so everyone actually knows where we are with these negotiations. As it currently stands, there is no clear pathway to a situation where the main protagonists are all sitting around the table.
All right. I would believe that I'm on the same page as you as far as the negotiations is concerned, because we've been observing since a couple of months the peace negotiations, and any outcome, if at all, has come out of it is very minimal. But for now, do stay on with us, Mr. Vaz, as we move ahead. Now, in Kyiv, viewers, residents say that they have little hope that renewed diplomacy will change the course of the war with Russia. The comments come as Ukraine's president says talks with Washington could move quickly. President Volodymyr Zelensky says he plans to meet US President Donald Trump soon, with key decisions possible before the new year. He says sensitive issues, including any territorial compromises, must be discussed directly by heads of states, and Kyiv is pushing for a face-to-face meeting. Let's listen in to what some of the residents have to say.
На жаль, вже дуже мало сподівань на те, що щось зміниться. А в мене чоловік військовий, в мене брат військовий, тому ми сподіваємося, що щось зміниться, але тільки на нашу користь. Ніяких територій позбуватися і віддавати ми не хочемо.
Я думаю, що кардинально нічого не зміниться. Я думаю, що ці обстріли можуть ще продовжуватися, але я маю велику надію, що це буде вже не так інтенсивно і буде все поступово затихати.
Нам Штати, як гарант нашої незалежності та суверенітету по Будапештському меморандуму, як наші гаранти, вони нам все обіцяють, але що ми бачимо, це тільки тиск, обмеження розвідданих, обмеження використання західної зброї по території Російської Федерації.
All right, I now request Mr. Vaz to join me back in the discussion here. Mr. Vaz, it was Trump that had said earlier that he's apparently upset with Ukraine and also his European backers. You know, now Zelensky is hoping for good outcomes in the new round of talks. Do you see Trump being as receptive, with his patience renewed with with Zelensky amid this, Christmas season?
Well, Donald Trump is angry and upset with everyone who does not agree with him. And as he controls the 24-hour news cycle with his announcements and his statements, he's going to be upset with anyone who doesn't say yes. But the Ukrainian president cannot say yes without the approval of the Ukrainian people. You cannot allow someone who has invaded your country just to take away land from that country. Now, as you know, a parallel negotiation is going on with Donald Trump's attempts to take over Greenland. He hasn't, I should say, as yet invaded Greenland. He's appointed an envoy. So that's the way diplomacy works. As a former Foreign Office minister, I keep reminding people, it's hard work being a diplomat. You have to discuss these things very, very carefully, negotiate every single point, and then bring it to the president.
Yeah.
It's unheard of to have these negotiations happening with the president actually leading them. This should be done by somebody else. So he's always going to be angry. He's always going to be upset. But what you said just now is interesting. The fact that Moscow wants to have a meeting again.
Yeah.
Remember, the last one was not particularly successful. Everyone was very unhappy with the outcome.
Which is what my next question to you is going to be. Zelensky has said the new proposal and the format that's discussed after the meetings involves new formats of meetings. That's going to most likely have, going to have a tri-party discussions, is indicated. Would you see Russia being ready to join such a format of the talks?
If Donald Trump is at the meeting, Vladimir Putin will go to the meeting because Donald Trump is his best friend. And therefore, I'm sure there can be, unless you get someone like the Pope intervening as a third party, it's difficult to know who in the world has not taken a position on Ukraine and Russia, either backing one side or the other. It's pointless having the Europeans in there because they are firmly on the side of Zelensky.
Yeah.
And to some extent, so is Trump. Not firmly, but formally, he's on their side. But at the end of the day, Russia will feel isolated unless he has somebody else in there. The best forum to discuss all this is the UN, because that's where the permanent members are. And that's where you have independent arbitrators. But they refuse to use the UN. They want to do all these negotiations themselves. And that's the failure of the UN to act effectively. So I think that Zelensky is not going to be enough. He's got to have Donald Trump at the meeting. I'm sure something's going to happen between now and the 31st of December, because as you know, he's promised to get this sorted, I think, within a month of becoming president. We're now going to be a year very shortly, and the Epstein files are coming out every day. So Donald Trump needs a rabbit out of the hat, so to speak. And the only way to do this is to get peace in Ukraine. And of course, he also wants his Nobel Prize.
Yeah, sure. Well, I don't know. Zelensky has European Union. He also has a little bit of Trump's sympathy, but the war still seems to be tilted, and the peace negotiations seem to be tilted towards Russia's side still. So, well, interesting developments, as you would agree. But again, I request you to stay on as we proceed further in the bulletin. Now, Israeli emergency services say that a Palestinian assailant ran over a man and stabbed a woman, killing them both in northern Israel. According to the Israeli police, the assailant from the occupied West Bank was shot and wounded by a civilian at the scene and taken to the hospital. After a preliminary investigation, police also noted that the string of incidents was a multi-phase terror attack that began in Beit Shean, a city near the West Bank's northern border, and ended in Muanot junction near Afula, where the suspected assailant was shot. Meanwhile, the Israeli Defense Minister, Israel Katz, says that he has instructed the military to respond forcefully in the West Bank town of Kabbat Itya, where he said the assailant came from, to thwart any further attacks. All right, I now request Mr. Vaz to join me once again.
Hi.
Hi, Mr. Vaz. How do we view this development? We're also seeing of a lone wolf attack where one Palestinian was killed, and now police calling the incident a multi-phase attack, especially with Israel sending its forces in the West Bank.
Well, we're always going to get these isolated incidents happening in Gaza, because Gaza is a flashpoint for the world. Everyone is watching Gaza, so every single thing that happens is going to be recorded. I don't know about this particular incident of this person who was run over by another vehicle and somebody who was attacked, but this is happening on a daily basis. And that is why what we need to see in Gaza is an independent force going in there to police the borders. You can't have Israel running Gaza. This is an independent country, now recognized by the vast majority of the UN. Everyone now, apart from a very few, recognize Gaza. What are the Israelis doing running Palestine? This is a separate state, and therefore we need an independent group in there running the situation, keeping everyone at bay so that there can be some progress in getting a permanent ceasefire. What we have at the moment in Gaza is only a temporary ceasefire. This is not enough. We need a permanent ceasefire as we go into the new year.
All right. Well, the ceasefire is definitely being violated time and again because none of the conditions are being met. None of the phases of the ceasefire's conditions have been met fully, and we're already progressing with the next phase. This, of course, continues to be a tricky situation, but also a very strong comment coming in from you of Gaza being a different country. We take note of that and move ahead. But for now, thank you very much for joining us in this discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And moving ahead, viewers, Sudan's Rapid Support Forces, or the RSF, says the country's army struck a fuel market in the city of Nyala, the RSF's administrative capital, as part of an intensified aerial campaign against its position in South Darfur. For 3 consecutive days, military drones and warplanes pounded strategic RSF sites across Nyala, including the international airport, military positions, and training facilities. The strike on the fuel market caused a massive fire, with fuel barrels exploding, according to videos shared on social media. Youssef Idris Youssef, the head of RSF's civil administration in South Darfur, has accused the army of deliberately targeting civilians, describing the attack as part of a systematic policy to punish Darfur residents for not resisting the RSF presence in their communities. The Sudanese military has not issued any statement regarding the strikes yet. Casualties were reported among both civilian and RSF members involved in the fuel trade. Moving ahead to some news now coming in from China. The Communist Party of China has expelled former China Life Insurance President Yang Chao following a corruption investigation. China's top anti-graft watchdog said Yang accepted bribes and kickbacks in exchange for favors in recruitment and promotions and allowed family members to misuse his power and influence. Authorities said he was disloyal to the party, violated discipline rules, interfered in investment decisions, and illegally accepted large sums of money. His illicit gains have been confiscated and the case has been transferred to prosecutors for further action. Yang, a longtime figure in China's banking and insurance sector, served as president and party chief of the state-owned insurer before retiring in 2011. I requested Robinder Sachdeva, international affairs expert, to now join me in this discussion. He joins us from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Mr. Sachdeva, for joining me in this discussion. Now, such kind of incident taking place in a communist closed country like China, what do you think is going to be the fate of the president of the bank?
Well, the fate of the former president of the bank, I think, will depend, one, on the scale and quantum of the financial corruption. That would be one parameter without doubt. Because looking at China over the last 10 years or plus, since Xi's anti-corruption campaign, cases wherein corruption has been over 100 million yuan, they say, or let's say $100 million, are dealt with very severely, including up to a death sentence or a death penalty, right? So, firstly, it will depend upon the scale of the financial corruption. That is one. Otherwise, it could lead to, because right now he has been expelled from the party. Now the next step would be that a case would be lodged against him. The prosecutors would go to the courts and then ask for whatever, punishment or judgment they would ask. So the process would start now. As of now, it's not known. As you mentioned, yes, he's been, blamed for some bribery, accepting gifts, large sums, unknown what sums, nepotism, or favoring promotions for some personnel. And also, he retired in 2011. So it's pretty interesting. The case against him started sometime in May or March of this year, I think. So that means he's been out of his office for the past 14 years. He must have been carrying on some activities as a consultant, that's what's said, but also trying to influence the present executives of China Life for some favorable outcomes. So, there is something definitely out there, it seems, but the sentence that he faces would depend upon the scale of the financial corruption that he has undertaken. Because remember, in China, it is also party discipline and corruption. So both of these cases, right? So he's violated both of these conditions, it seems. So he's headed for some serious reckoning.
But how do you see that it was possible for a public figure like that to carry on this kind of corruption at such scale and continue doing that even after retirement? And nobody watching out. How was no watchdog, catching on his activities up until now?
That's a great question, and actually that leads to one important outcome of this case, which would emerge. I think there'll be tighter focus on compliance, exactly to the point that you make. How could he have been carrying on such, corrupt deals or bribery or influencing decisions? So one would be very much a tightening of the compliance, and that's what China wants to show and tell the world, that its financial sector, especially under stress right now, it is taking all steps to make sure that it is in compliance. So that is one. Secondly, as to how he could, well, you have, since Xi Jinping came to power, I think in 2017 or so, it was said that they have netted over 1 million individuals across the country in this anti-corruption campaign, one. Out of those 1 million, and they categorize them into two categories. One they say are the tigers. That is the ones with the large scale corruption and, indiscipline. And the others are the flies, the grassroots corrupt people. Uh, so this 1 million or so number was in the year 2017 all told together. In the last 2-3 years, apparently the anti-corruption drive has gotten even more, active. And over 700, if I'm not mistaken, that's some approximate number, over 700 of high officials, ranks of vice minister. A vice minister in the Chinese system would be the rank of a secretary in the Indian system or in many, civil services. So 700 or so individuals up to the ranks of vice ministers have been hauled up, and hundreds or maybe thousands, the number is running into thousands, I'm sorry. I forget what exact number, maybe 100,000 or more, of grassroots corruption cases have been identified and they've been hauled up. So China under Xi, it's not an anti-corruption campaign what Xi is doing. Xi has made anti-corruption a part of governance itself. Okay, so it's not that, he came to power. Yes, the initial years it was that he's running anti-corruption campaign. The anti-corruption campaign, for all we can understand as of now, has actually widened and widened in scope. So this the approach or the focus on corruption and party discipline both, because the party is above everything else. So both of these things have become core elements of China's governance strategy, I would say.
Sure. Well, for now, thank you very much, Mr. Sachdev, for joining me in this discussion. And we have some more news now coming in from China. Viewers, Chinese companies developing reusable commercial rockets will now have access to a fast lane for initial public offerings on the tech-heavy star market that exempts them from some financial requirements. The fast lane exempts Chinese rocket firms from profitability and minimum revenue thresholds, and instead requires them to have met key technological milestones, including one successful orbital launch using reusable rocket technology. According to experts, Beijing is seeking to address a gap in its space capabilities compared to the US, which is currently dominant in the ability to return, recover and reuse a rocket's first stage or booster after it's launched. Earlier this month, China's leading private rocket firm Landscape became the first domestic entity to carry out a full reusable rocket test with the launch of its new Zhu-Q3 model, signaling its ambition to catch up to SpaceX. While the launch failed to complete the crucial step of recovering the rocket's booster, a flurry of Chinese state-owned and private players are now rushing to test launch their own reusable rockets. And with that, it's a wrap on this bulletin of NewsX World, but do stay tuned for more international news and updates.